Right then, you asked for this format, you've got this format. VoD review, Wave Invitational Cup Final, FABRIKEN versus Parrots, Map 1, Ascent. And we're starting out as all good VoD reviews do in a Paint.net window, because I want to look a little bit at team compositions going in. I more so want to, we'll understand this as the game goes on more so, but there is something that we need to address first. So these are the compositions. These are the compositions lined up side by side. So let's look down there. 2 ciphers, standard stuff. Cipher still being pretty much picked, 100% picked. 2 Sovas, again Sova being a very high pick rate. Cipher and Sova having great vision tools, blah blah blah. 2 breaches, a little bit more unusual. Breaches coming into vogue a little bit more, I think, as time goes on. Whatever. Omen and Brimstone. This actually is more similar than it might seem, and you've probably been seeing this a lot actually. A lot of players who were almost exclusively Brimstone players during the beta are now picking up Omen, because fundamentally, the thing that defines the kits in both cases is pretty much the same. It's the smokes. Brimstone has 3 smokes he can whack down at one time. Omen has essentially 2 smokes he can whack down at one time, right? But it does recharge, and that's the defining thing really on both their kits. Obviously Omen has the blind, Brimstone has his fire, but the smokes are what makes the kit. So what players are finding is there's actually a easier crossover than some of them might have thought. So, and Latex is one of those players who played a lot of Brimstone during beta. He's now dabbling a bit in Omen. So that's cool. The difference is in the 5th pick. One team has Raze, one team has Sage. And that's notable because pretty much nobody tries to play without Sage. Her kit is just a ridiculous design inherently, with how the healing works and how the res works. She's been pretty much 100% picked by, well, not quite 100%, because there were always going to be teams who try to play without her, even in competitive play, even good teams. But for the most part, she's been universal since pretty much the first patch of closed beta. But here she is not being played. And this, we should be clear here, if you're not too familiar with EU Valorant, FABRIKEN are not a joke. FABRIKEN are not some small time team. They are so I did a power rankings coming out of closed beta. They were 6th on those rankings. They would probably be higher now. They won the Team Liquid Academy tournament this week. They were runners up at this tournament, which had a massive field. Pretty much almost every top team. The very, very good cream of the crop weren't here, but pretty much everyone else was. They came 2nd at this tournament. They've had a lot of other tournament wins. They're a top team, and they are not playing Sage. So, and I have an article up on that if you want to read more on why, in particular, they've gone and not had Sage. But let's just look at what it means here. So the big thing you've got to understand here is, we'll show it as we go along more so. But the big thing to consider first out is, well, what does not having a Sage mean for you in terms of what are you missing team-wide in terms of your ability loadout, essentially, right? Is it the slow orbs? No, of course it's not. Yes, they're the only ones that do that particular trick where they have that massive slow on. Oh, I guess Cypher kind of does as well. But they fill similar roles, something like, I don't know, Phoenix Fire, Brimstone Fire, any sort of other area of effect denial ability, so whatever. The wall is fairly unique, but with the range nerfs to it, with the fact that it costs 400 now, it's not as strong as it used to be, and it's mainly used either for self-boosting or for sealing off retake entrances for a time, so whatever. The big thing that makes Sage and makes playing with Sage different from any other agent is the heal, and it's the res. And you're going to see what it means to not have both of those things as we go along. I should point out here as well, FABRIKEN, no heals whatsoever on this kit. On this team composition, rather. Cypher, Sova, Breach, Omen, Raze. So no Phoenix, no Reyna, no Sage. No healing whatsoever. And we'll see why that matters. Okay, so starting with the pistol, one small thing to note on the buys here. Shadow buys nothing. And the reason, and this is unusual. The reason for this is that Shadow is the primary operator user of FABRIKEN. And in order to guarantee that you can get an acceptable loadout in round 3 with an operator, you have to go essentially naked on the pistol round, because you get 800 from the pistol, 1900 from losing round 1, 2400 from losing round 2, which adds up to 5100. And you need 4900 for operator and light shields. Very few it's actually pretty rare. Most players won't do this. Most players will just buy anyway, but he's obviously buying. He's obviously not doing it. So it's a little unusual, but it's fairly explainable. And this ends up being a pretty unremarkable pistol, to be honest. Essentially, Party Parrots do a quick take onto B. FABRIKEN just about get the retake on there. Obviously, it goes on to this 1v1. Leo Deads end up getting off the clutch. Whatever. FABRIKEN win the first round is the important thing, is the one relevant part here. So I should say quick shout out here to the Wave observers, because they always have the scoreboard up right at the start of rounds, which is really nice for anybody working with the VoDs. So thanks to that. Anyway, what FABRIKEN do with their round winning money, this is fairly standard. I don't think it's best practice, if I'm being completely honest about it, but that's a really long discussion that I kind of want to keep this video in reasonable bounds, so we won't go into that. But this is standard. They just ball up what they could, heavy shields, spectres, etc. What Party Parrots are doing is interesting. I mean, the short version is they're false buying. They took their round 1, lost money, they bought what they could with it, and they're contesting this round heavily. And essentially there are two, in terms of losing round 1, there are two philosophies, 2 ways you can approach it in Valorant with how the economy works. The more conventional ones say, okay, we lost round 1, we're going to eco round 2, so we're going to, if we get lucky, we get lucky, but we're accepting we're probably going to drop to 0 and 2. We'll have 1900 loss bonus from round 1, 2400 loss bonus from round 2, 4300. So we can buy rifles, we can buy heavy shields, and we'll have some money left over. Great. That's kind of the standard way of doing things. That's the norm. The other way you can approach is to say, okay, we're going to force round 2. So we're going to buy everything. If we lose that, then we won't contest round 3. So you're going down 0-3 in that case. But what you're doing is, 1, you have a chance of winning round 2, but 2, because of how loss bonuses work, okay, no, 1900, you spent that. 2400 for the loss on round 2, 2900 for the loss on round 3, 5300, the operator is 4500, plus the shields. You probably get, you'll usually get light shields, so 400 more, 4900. So essentially, if you force buy here, yeah, you're not gonna, like, you're gonna have to go from extra round, but you can do single, 2, 3, however many operators you possibly want on round 4. And that's what Party Parrots are essentially doing here. That's one part of it. And to be honest, this is one of these decisions where there's not really a 100% of the time correct right answer. I do tend to think actually though that playing on Ascent, particularly on attacking on Ascent, this is about as close as you can get to as with regards to you should probably almost be force buying here, because just the way that this map works, operators are so important to it, because you've got the double sightlines of mid, you can do a lot sort of dodging in and out with regards to the tunnel with the entrances both on B and on A, on the long entrances essentially, right? This is an incredibly operator friendly map, and I would far rather, as long as I have anybody who can half competently operate, I would far rather have that than get the extra round and go for rifles. Now the other half of this, and in particular, watch what Sova does here. Watch what Sova does here, and watch what Party Parrots are doing in mid here. Sova's all the way back. And this is even without him, that because, okay, so part of the thing with the buy here was that Party Parrots bought 2 bulldogs. So, and the bulldog has it's essentially a marshal, but actually usable, right? It has the bam headshot. That's with its alt fire. That's kind of the thing that the Bulldog is notable for, right? And they're contesting the sightlines in mid, and they're with it, knowing that if FABRIKEN just buy Spectres, then they will actually lose that battle. But more so the thing is, look how far back he was, and I'm going to pause it in a second here. Part of the reason he's that far back is because without Sage, without a healer, there is very little room for error, and there's very little room to peek to whatever to get information on FABRIKEN's side. And this is the big, it's not, I don't want to say it's the big flaw of the comp, because the comp actually has worked pretty well for them, but it's a limitation of the comp. More so than any other team, you're really struggling in terms of you can't peek for information. You have to be able to hold your sides. You have to be able to do this. And they actually do hold their sides quite well, but you are limited. And in particular on Ascent, this is kind of scary, because it means you can't look out over mid. You have to play all the way back. You generally play those two spots where if they cross through them, then you'll just try and gun them down. But it makes it very predictable, and if you get into a funk here, this gets really scary. And this is true of various different maps, and it's not always, it's not actually, it can be on different sides as well, for example. So on Bind, it's really difficult to get an offensive entry without having that ability to peek for information. And actually, FABRIKEN nearly lost they were down 11-4, having started on O side on Bind against Five Dogs, which is a fairly low ranking team in the Teal Academy finals. But that's the big risk for here, right? You can't peek for information at all, so you have to get it right, and that's scary. And as it happens, Party Parrots win 4 on the trot, including that forced by anti-eco whatever. And to be honest, they actually make a mistake here with regards to they force on B long. You'll see it in a second. Leo does get something amazing rifle down, but they shouldn't really be in position to make that happen in the first place. But you can see it's also good. Look how far back he is. Look where Raze is as well with regards to playing that cubby. They have zero control over mid because they can't peek for information. The risk is too great, and this is just a Sage problem. This is, I don't want to say it's the flaw of this comp, because the comp does work, but it is an issue. You can't peek for information, so you have to be very, very confident in your ability to spray down. There are sides of maps where it works better, there are sides of maps where it works worse. But this question of information, this is the key thing that defines pretty much everything about what this Sage comp is, what this Sage list comp is rather. But you can also see here that when this works really well. And there's nothing too fancy about it. You're just giving yourself more tools with regards to flashes, smokes, damage utility, all these sorts of things. And if you get a situation where you're all in one place, you're fighting a 5v5, you actually will win. Because the value of Sage is not that, oh, she's going to turn around fights that are already happening. It's her ability to essentially say, okay, your pick or your attempted pick did not matter at all. And so having her big boon, not having her very, very risky is the thing I'd say. It's one of those cases where if you're down, and if you start losing without the Sage, it can be very tricky to start coming back from that. So we come into the half, 7-5 to Party Parrots. It probably should have been more in their favour, but they do make a couple of essentially unforced errors with regards. They get a little bit too cute because they have mid all day. They have mid all day here. Even with Shadow on Breach, Shadow's a very good operator player, Shadow's a very good Breach player, and he does get a few kills. But they have mid all day, and when he's doing anything, it's usually actually contesting on A side in that little tunnel up there, where they kind of end up screwing themselves essentially when they don't go either. They don't take over mid. I mean, they take over mid every time, but they don't take over mid and then use mid to either push through B or push through A short, essentially. They get a bit more fancy, they try and put more people over onto B long or onto A long. That's actually when they've lost a lot of these rounds. So this is the fact that this isn't hugely in their favour. It's more a case of them getting too cute than anything else, I think, to be honest. But the other interesting thing here is, I mean, look at the buy, right? FABRIKEN do a little lesson here, although it's not the lesson on false buying. It's the lesson of you absolutely have to have control over mid here, and the Spectred is not enough. The standard SMG buy is not enough, on Ascent in particular, because both the mid angles are realistically always going to be like 30-40 meters, right? No matter how you slice them. It's not good enough to have an SMG here. So they buy 2 Bulldogs, they hold over mid. Actually, Parrots don't force buy here. I think that's a mistake personally, even allowing for the ability to get smoked off. You sort of see how this plays out early. But you can see also here, the breach sets up her Omen in terms of giving him a line. They can then start creeping up onto mid. But they're still playing very, very far back. I mean, and the Cypher play from Meadow is he's one of the better riflers around. The Cypher play for FABRIKEN Meadow. If they can't rely on him, then this becomes very difficult indeed, because they need him to be able to play way, way back on B. Yeah, and this ends up going pretty well because of essentially the eco. And this is kind of where they start pulling away, because while the flip side of the stage thing is, again, while if you get behind, it's terrible. If you get ahead and you don't have and you're not worrying about peeking for information, you just go and take what you want, then it's great, because you have a extra suite of tools to do damage, to get vision, to smoke, and they really play it out well here as a result. So, and this ends up being 13-9 13-10 rather to FABRIKEN. They give up a couple of rounds here and there, but they're able to essentially just keep bursting. And you can see what they're about to do here, right? They're going to burst 5 men onto A. They have extra utility, they have more damage. They ultimately can get an entry over time. And Sage is kind of left here, like, what am I going to do? They've killed 2 of my teammates on site. We can try and peek into them a little bit, but it's difficult, right? Like, what? Oh, you can't salvage those bodies. But I mean, I think the interesting part here is though that FABRIKEN specifically are doing this in part because while they have a very good primary operator user in the form of Shadow, the other guys, I mean, Latex kind of does it. They don't really have a good secondary. Unlike Party Parrots, where most of them, like, they have a very, very good primary in terms of Shao. But Dinks J's pretty handy with it. I don't know how to pronounce it. 7SK SSK7, very handy for an operator. The other 2 can't particularly use it that well, but they're an operator-heavy team, right? And I guess that's the interesting part of it. The Sage kind of works really well on a team where, okay, you're going to have one person, an operator, to try and hold, probably hold mid, maybe hold a particular angle at some point on the site. But if you're in a situation where it's, okay, well, I'm just going to peek. We have 2 operators, we're going to hold 2 lines. We're always at a risk of losing one of them, so but we need to have a Sage. You aren't going to be thinking about the strategy. You're going to be thinking, we need Sage. If you're only running one operator, and a lot of top teams that don't have great second operator users. I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately, Fish123. Had Ardis, who is ridiculous, but then the secondary guy, I think it's Cryptics. I'm not actually 100% sure. For teams who only really don't really use 2-op setups, the Sage thing is actually interesting. Again, the thing you're giving up here is information. You can't take information, like you can't do what DinksJ is doing here, with regards to just sitting here, sniping away, risking yourself a little bit. Obviously, this, yeah, you can't do that as a team that doesn't have a Sage. But if you're playing like FABRIKEN, where you have a player who's probably the best rifler in the entire European region right now, on current form, in terms of snipe ban, yeah, you can absolutely make this work. Is it limiting? Yeah. Might teams start finding ways around this? Yeah, because there are going to, as a result, very transparently be certain areas of the map you cannot control. But can it be effective? Yeah. And you'll see here. I mean, we see in this game. You know, I think there were some errors from Parrots with regards to. I mean, I don't want to go too much longer on this review. But the answer is, I mean, the short answer is they kind of got a bit too cute with regards to not harnessing the mid advantage to the fullest. I think would be the simple way to put it. But this strategy has been working for FABRIKEN. And it's interesting. And as teams start figuring out more, okay, well, this is how we use multiple operators, this is when we maybe don't use multiple operators, this is what fits the players best on our team, blah, blah, blah. I think the Sage question, this is making me think the Sage question might become an actual question rather than just run Sage. Because, yeah, it's not quite as simple as I would have initially thought, particularly with regards to the extraneous parts of a kit like the slow wall, like the wall, have been nerfed. The way that she treats the effect she has on the game is still different to any other agent. It's still game warping. That's not really deniable. But it isn't simply you can't play without a Sage. And the FABRIKEN stuff is, with regards to this being a very successful team that is playing without it, is really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing more from them. And from Parrots, to be honest, because these might be two of my favourite teams in Europe, if I'm being honest about it. But yeah, that's the VoD review. Hope you enjoyed.